Hi, in the screencast we're going to talk about digestive systems, the ingestion, the digestion, and the absorption of nutrients in the body. So animals need to use energy, they need to obtain energy, and they make that from the nutrients that they get in food along with the oxygen that they take in. So digestion has to occur before any biosynthesis can take place, or building of body structures. Remember that animals are heterotrophs. That means they need to take in their food from other sources. So the digestive system is just another example of a body system that works to maintain homeostasis and do its part in bringing in food, digesting it into its usable and absorbable compounds that can be distributed all over the body for biosynthesis and metabolism. So in animals it is a little bit more than just digestion. These processes need to take place, and especially just breaking it down isn't enough. It needs to be broken down into the macromolecules that can actually be absorbed into the body tissues. And there's different examples. So every one of an animal's digestive systems is really a tube within a tube, it's referred to as. So digestion is going to take place, and somewhere along that tube, absorption is also going to take place. And whatever is left over is excreted from the body. So in looking at the human digestive system, there's some important anatomical features, although we aren't going to need to know all of these, but it's important to have an idea of the basics of the digestive system. So looking at the alimentary canal here, after chewing and swallowing food, it's going to take a matter of seconds for it to pass down into the actual stomach, where it's going to spend maybe a few hours, depending on what it is, being only partially digested. The stomach does some digestion of certain things, specifically proteins, really, for the most part, but final digestion takes place in the small intestine, and especially important is the nutrient absorption that takes place there over maybe 5 to 6 hours. So in about 12 hours or so, and in 12 to 24, any undigested material is going to enter the large intestine and is going to be excreted. Whatever is not left over, whatever is not reabsorbed, water is taken out in the large intestine, and we eliminate the waste products. These are common structures to digestive systems. Movement is called peristalsis. It's moved along by rhythmic contractions of smooth muscle. Sphincters, which are just ring-shaped muscular tissues, which are kind of like cinching up a sack at one end, or a backpack, a bag with a drawstring. And what it does is it closes off sections of a canal, of a GI tract, and then of course all the accessory organs that play a role in digestion. During peristalsis, which is actually the beginning of that, is just swallowing, because the trachea and the esophagus itself have the same opening, there has to be a mechanism to kind of wall off one or the other, and that's the job of the epiglottis. It's really important to note that digestion begins in the mouth. It isn't something that takes place deep within the body. So mechanical digestion takes place, but also chemical digestion. And this is probably the number one thing to know, is an enzyme called amylase. And amylase itself is going to break down complex carbohydrates into simpler sugars. You could even test this by chewing really starchy foods like a soda cracker, a saltine, and if you can stand chewing it for a few minutes, sometimes you can actually start to taste the simple sugars as amylase goes to work. The stomach is an interesting organ in that some digestion takes place. It's a really acidic environment because hydrochloric acid is secreted by specific cells within the lining, and helps aid in chemical digestion. So otherwise, that's really a lot of just food storage. Very little absorption of nutrients takes place through the stomach wall. That'll happen in the small intestine. The small intestine really is the premier digestive organ. Not only does it finish digestion of the major classes of macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, but that is where absorption is going to take place. Probably the most important one here is the duodenum, where, as a side note, duodenum, duodenum, you can pronounce it any way that you would like to, is where most of the digestion occurs. It's the first about 5-6 inches of the small intestine where the pancreas secretes important enzymes to finish off digestion and where absorption begins. But then we have the duodenum and the ileum, and really less and less nutrient absorption takes place the further down you go, but more and more water absorption takes place through the walls of the small intestine. So again, at the duodenum, it is the first section of the small intestine, and that is where juices or hormones and acids and secretions are going to be added from the pancreas and from the liver and the gallbladder. We've talked about the pancreas and its role in hormonal secretion before, but it also plays a big role in digestion. And these peptidases are enzymes that are going to be secreted. We don't need to know those specific ones, but they are going to be secreted to break down proteins, hence the name, and pancreatic amylase is going to further break down carbohydrates. So there's also going to be release in buffers because of the need to reduce the acidity of the contents coming through the stomach and its high acidity or low pH value there. So also buffers are going to be secreted. The liver plays an important role in producing bile. It produces bile, which is going to be stored in the gallbladder until it would be needed. So the bile, which is going to emulsify or begin to break down fats, is going to be secreted into the small intestine from the gallbladder, even though it's produced by the liver. So this is just a look at the types of things that need to be broken down. So of the 4 big categories of macronutrients, carbs, proteins, nucleic acids, and fats, you can see where they are broken down, and notice that the small intestine is really, again, the most important organ of digestion in the body. You should recognize the terms villi and microvilli. These are the projections, as you can see here, the small villi and the even smaller microvilli. But the big thing there, like so many other things in the body, is an increased surface area. And more surface area is going to be more area for absorption. That's why a sponge is going to do a better job of absorbing liquids than a piece of paper. There's more surface area with all the pores there. That's exactly what villi and microvilli are designed to do. Both passive and active transport are used. Remember that passive transport is just going to be simple diffusion, and active transport is going to be a use of energy to make sure that you pump the needed macromolecules, the digested materials, those molecules, into the bloodstream across the cell membranes. And you can get a lot more, of course, a greater volume than would be possible just to take the time with the passive diffusion. So it is very worth the cost, energy-wise, for the body to use active transport. And of course, a lot of the energy is going to be used of the body. You think about the energy needs, the calorie intake of the body. A lot of that is used to actually absorb the materials that you're talking about. So much energy is used then. Sometimes you sort of have that feeling, lethargic and tired feeling after eating a big meal, because a lot of the energy is being used for this exact process of digestion. The main thing to know with the large intestine is that its job is to reabsorb water, to put water back into essentially the bloodstream and redistribute it throughout the body from the undigested material that has entered the large intestine. The material that has entered the large intestine from the small intestine by that time is really free of nutrients that the body is going to use. A couple of things, maybe not that fun to talk about, but when the body pushes that undigested material through at such a high rate, because it through feedback mechanisms that the body is realizing it wants to get rid of maybe a contaminated food stuff or whatever it might be. If it's moved through too quickly without absorbing water, that's where you have a diarrhea situation where you absorb too much water. That's called constipation. There's too much water removed, and the food does not move to exit the body at a high enough rate. Really, it's important to just know that large intestine has a number of important, helpful bacteria that live there. It's important, needed flora, but of course, if you would tend to ingest these things, they could make you very sick. But it's just kind of interesting that they would still live there normally. Namely, E. coli. It lives in the large intestine and helps produce and synthesize vitamins and things that we need. But at the same time, if we were to ingest it, would make us sick. The rectum is the last section of the large intestine. Its job really is to collect all the final undigested materials and ready them to be eliminated as feces out of the body. Speaking of feces, eliminating feces, you can look up rabbits, some rabbits that are known for a process called coprophagy on your own if it interests you. So really takeaways here. A lot of the written material on these slides was a little bit more complex than we need. It'd be a good idea for you to be able to pause here and just to review the main digestive and absorption processes that are going on in each of these spots. And these are pretty much the breakdown or summary of what's going on in each part of the digestive system without getting too complex.